Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wednesday here on the Pagan Perspective. I'm your host, Eric. This week we are talking about labels. This week, in talking about labels, we had a topic come up and a suggestion of basically just something to talk about and discuss as opposed to an actual question. So, the idea is that there is a relatively recent movement, and in recent I mean ever, because this has been going on since the beginning of the dawning of time, that people want to be called something appropriate, or people who are calling themselves the same thing you are but act or practice or believe differently are calling themselves the same thing that you're calling yourself, and that seems to be problematic. Well, I understand where that stems from. Let me give you guys a little bit of information about just the social animal that I am. When I go to call myself something, whether that be a heathen or a Norse pantheist or a pagan in general, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to narrow down the field of things that I am not by stating kind of a broad spectrum of things that I am. I like to speak in the affirmative when at all possible. So that's one of the things that a lot of people do to, like Kara said, narrow down and get to a jumping off point of what I believe and what I kind of stand for. Well, I like to think that labels are not important, although sometimes opposing labels really are for a lot of people. It's one of those things where if somebody walks up to you and says, "Well, I am a Reconstructionist Celtic lore person," I immediately think Reconstructionist. That's the people who are trying to make society the way it used to be, right? Yeah, I don't really want any part of that. Although I could be wrong. It could be something entirely different than what I have experienced. So labels in general kind of give you a jumping off point, which is a good thing, but at the same time they interject kind of precedent experience and sometimes bias and prejudice that goes along with those labels. So labels are neither good nor bad, but occasionally helpful. When it comes right down to what do I call myself, I'm sure some of you are relatively new to watching this channel and even my videos, some of you. But I call myself a heathen. I call myself a pagan. Occasionally, I call myself an agnostic with Norse pantheon leanings. I generally don't try and nail it down because it's one of those things that continually feels different to me. There's no set in stone label that I would be willing to put on myself. So it's one of those things that I just usually explain it to people as opposed to giving them a label or a name. And that's, again, where labels don't come in handy for me sometimes. But it is one of those things that if you feel that you should be calling yourself something, do it. If it offends other people, that's their problem. Especially in places where we have things like freedom of speech and freedom of expression. I am allowed to do, say, or be something that offends you. That is my right. And you have the right to be offended. So, that's just one of those things where labels piss people off sometimes, and that's just the way the world works in those instances. But I have the right to do that, and so do you. And, be offended if you want. Again, that's your right. So, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, if you'd like to continue this discussion in the comments section below, feel free to do any of those things. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, until next time, Odin be with you.